Hey y'all, welcome to the season 9 stage 3 draft analysis video with coaches Birdido and Black J 32. Say hi.
Hey there, teams.
We are going to try to make this a shorter video than some of the last ones, a little bit due to the time constraints on our end, but also because other coaches have talked about making their own draft analysis videos. So our goal isn't to make it comprehensive, but to kind of give first impressions and go from there. We also have we're doing what we did stage 1, which is we are having categories that coaches can win, like best speed tiers, best hazards, and so forth. And so as we go over each team, we'll each give a grade, and then we will talk about the categories that they get honorable mention in, and then the categories that each team has won.
Great. Yeah. And so why don't we just introduce the categories here real quick so you all can be thinking about the categories as we go through the teams and see what you think, your team and other teams should fit in. So kind of in order, we have best speed tiers, best hazards, best hazard removal, best fire, water, grass core, best dragon, fairy, steel core, best offensive core, best defensive core, team that checks all the boxes. And then, those are sort of some standard draft categories. And then we have most tried which is sort of Pokemon that have seen success in our league before. We have team matches coach. This is a new superlative and sort of, saying, oh, that's such an Andy team. That's such a Kyle team. But for each coach, we have best physical special split, best use of low tiers, and best weird tech.
And yeah,
Options.
for weird tech, obviously it's what you can think of, but it's also things like they have Pokemon that aren't necessarily gimmicks, but can also just fill a certain tech role that will help the other team or help their team perform. So I think all the rest are pretty self-explanatory. Do you have anything else before we get started?
Mm-hmm. No, I think we should just go right into it. Try and
Okay.
get this one under an hour.
Right. So that would mean like 4 minutes a team, which won't happen, but we have goals in our lives and we strive to achieve them. All right. So first one up, Kanto Emirates. Adam, give us your first impressions.
Yeah, first impression of the Kanto Emirates. And I'm actually playing the Emirates week 1, so I've had a chance to look at them quite a bit. Yeah, I think this is it's just kind of an interesting team to me. There's there's a little bit of overlap in things like Alolan Persian and Lipard. And it kind of is unfortunate that Megalodios is sandwiched in there. So kind of the fast things are a little bit frail. And then Megalodios shares a bug weakness with those two. And then kind of going down, you see there's a couple more of our tech Pokemon like Ditto, Pokemon like Aeon, which, you see the level 1 Shell Bell strat. And I'm seeing a little bit of overlap in typing. So Golisopod, Azumarill, Volcanion has some type overlap. Necrozma, Megalodios, Mega 1 and Tier 1 with some overlap there. So that's kind of my first impression. It's definitely a more offensive team with things like Azumarill. You can run Specs Volcanion and Megalodios, very offensive, but it kind of has this weird tech vibe to me.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of talking about it. Like offense and tech, a little bit of gimmicks. I feel like opponents of the Kanto Emirates might prep for the strongest things and then lose outright to something that they didn't even know. Oh, I didn't even know this Pokemon had that move. I think is where Kanto Emirates will get some of their wins. Their speed tiers are fine though. Like you said, there's some weakness overlap in the fast Pokemon. But in general, there's not like, I guess there's a little bit of quite a sizable gap between Lipard and Rotom Heat. And I would say they have a decent Firewater Grass core. In that, I would call that Rotom Heat, Venusaur, and then any of the water types.
Azumarill? Maybe Azumarill, potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's definitely good. I think there's could be some concerns about the hazard removal. Like, are you going to need to be running defog on Megalodios?
Yeah.
Uh, but spikes with Galissapod is very cool. And I guess Aeon and Necrozma both get Stealth Rock, so I think the hazards and the removal are could be a little bit better.
Cool. Yeah, I think as far as utility, we talked about some of the weird tech. I think Ditto will help keep his opponents in check. Because you can't really set up your Pokemon as well when your opponent has Ditto. So even like Ditto Megalodios is a decent combo because Megalodios is a lot more threatening when things can't Calm Mind in front of it or do any other kind of setup. So those are kind of like some of the highlights of the teams or of the team. I gave this team a C.
And I gave this a C plus overall. And for our honorable mentions, the Kanto Emirates won best or honorable mention for Firewater Grass Core. And they won the superlative in the best weird tech options category.
Great.
Cool. Tell
Next
us
up,
about the Anchorage Ninetales.
one of the other Schmitz. So this team is kind of a, what would I call the type? I guess a hyper offense. Yeah, I think it's it seems like a team built around Alolan Ninetales with I'm not only just looking at the Alolan Sandslash down there to give it a hail offense, but also just the amount of setup options that would appreciate screens. So Durant,
Yeah.
Infernape, Zoroark, Porygon Z, HIPAA, Unbound. All of those are a lot more threatening with screens up. So, I mean, and also with Hail breaking any sort of sashes to run Hail and then in Swords Dance Infernape or Nasty Plot, Zoroark, even Nasty Plot, HIPAA, Unbound, to help with like screens up to help nerf its bug weakness. I see him winning games through that hyper offense. And with that in mind, the speed tiers aren't bad actually.
Yeah, thinking about Alolan Sandslash getting Slush Rush and kind of boosting up there near Mega Sceptile. And then it's easy to run Scarf on Durant or Infernape or Zoroark. Yeah, so I think the speed tiers are it might be nice to have a little bit more coverage in the lower tiers, but because, like you mentioned, Kyle, this team is pretty hyper offensive, or rather, I guess the way I would say it is that it has to be played hyper offense because it can't really survive on defense.
Right.
Maybe Mamoswine and defensive Infernape are what you can kind of, plus screens, but really to me, this team,
yeah, the defense
like
is lacking.
Yeah, it's a little bit locked into a specific play style, even though I don't know how well the draft really lends itself to hyper offense, but it sort of has to be played that way.
Right. The hazards are fine. It's got a few Mamoswine, Sandslash,
Infernape gets rocks too.
Yep.
Yeah, and having a rapid spinner in Alolan Sandslash is pretty good. And
right.
So Valley's a nice defogger, especially with the parting shot pivot also.
Right. So with that in mind, I think I will give it a C plus.
And we actually agreed on this. I gave it a C plus as well.
Awesome.
For honorable mentions, Coach Brian S. Won the team matches coach. This is a very Brian team, and it's great. It's a Alolan Ninetales team for the Anchorage Ninetales, so I'm glad about that.
Right.
And honorable mention for the weird tech. And then Kyle, why don't you give us the best in class?
It got the superlative for best physical special split. Yeah, I mean, not with things like HIPAA Unbound and Infernape, it could really go either way, and for that reason, it won the category.
Great. Okay, so our next coach is Coach Ben of the Orlando Magikarp. Coach Ben, well, Kyle, why don't you tell us your first impressions of this team?
Yeah, I also had trouble figuring out what type of team this was. I ended up saying it's like kind of hyper offense plus Tangrowth Toxapex. It's like, I mean, like great potential setup options in Salamence, Lucario, Beedrill, other offensive threats like Specs Gardevoir, Spec Swallow, Jolteon. So he has ways to move around, and his defense isn't bad, even just thinking about Tangrowth Toxapex. Um, Also with a spin blocker and Chandelure. Um, but kind of like with the last team, it seems like the way to win isn't to rely on Tangrowth Toxapex, but to try to break through with either choice locking things um, into moves or pivoting around, kind of like a version of an offensive team.
Yeah, and unfortunately, even though this team would do really well with pivoting, we have things like Mega Beedrill and Jolteon, and which would love to kind of pivot in and out. But unfortunately, this team doesn't really have very many hazard removal options. Looks like Swellow. Yeah, Swellow gets defog. You could run defog on Salamence. But really, it's kind of unfortunate that a lot of those offensive options really don't like Stealth Rocks and are kind of, this team is a little bit unable to deal with those. I feel.
Yeah, that'll be difficult for them. They're gonna have to figure out how fast they want to win.
Right, but yeah, but again, with Toxapex and Tangrowth and Chandelure, I think we're seeing a really cool Firewater Grass core. I like the idea that Chandelure is a spin blocker, so kind of adding to that defensive utility. You could run Assault Vest Chandelure pretty easily on this team. Right. And then Dragon Fairy Steel is great as well. Salamence, Lucario, Gardevoir.
Yeah, I don't know if it's good. I mean the speed tiers are great with it, and I just feel like they're all pretty mid tier for the tier that they're in, like mid. How do you rate mid rated within the tiers that they're in? But I do think they're good. I think they're probably his main offensive threats.
Yeah.
And I think one other thing I'll say is that like a lot of these Pokemon are ones that our league relies on, especially that defensive core. We've had that drafted quite a few times. Jolteon always gets picked. Gardevoir's been picked a lot more recently. So yeah, with that in mind, the honorable mentions in the superlative categories that the Magikarp 1 would be the defensive core, obviously, with the Tangrowth Toxapex, and also the Firewater Grass core that helps round out.
Yep. And the superlative that our coach of the Orlando Magikarp 1 is the most tried and true. So again, looking at that kind of Tangrowth Toxapex, things that have been drafted many times, like Lucario, Chandelure has made quite a few appearances, Jolteon, Swellow, and Mega Beedrill more recently, and even Gardevoir. So
very Porch League.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So next up is Washington HIPAA.
All right,
Adam, what are they about?
So this team is defense, and more defense.
Oh wait, did we even rank the other team? No, we didn't.
Oh no. All right. Yeah, I gave it a B-.
I agree.
Cool. Great.
Next up.
Yeah. So this, POTUS, Washington HIPAA, Coach Brian Tim. This team, again, defense, and more defense. And I think we called this team kind of a semi-stall team. Yeah. It doesn't have necessarily those stall staples like you might expect a Mega Sableye or something to that effect on a true stall team. But I think, looking at...
It's kind of draft league stall, though.
It is a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's not, like, Zapdos, Cresselia, Vaporeon, Blissey, Registeel. Like, a lot of Wish Pass options into really fat Pokemon.
Right. You're really going to have to be watching your PP against, Coach Brian. So yeah, watch a pressure Zapdos to come sometimes. That would be interesting. Looking at the speed tiers, there's again, and kind of by virtue of having such a defensive team, we're seeing like Blissey, Machamp, Registeel, Piloswine are all between 50 and 55. A couple Pokemon on it, base 100. So there's a few speed gaps. Fastest Pokemon is Mega Diancie at base 110, which in most seasons I would consider a problem. It's definitely not great, but also this season we noticed a lot lower overall speeds than usual. So maybe this is something that Brian can play around.
Yeah. Regarding hazards and hazard removal, it looks like a lot of stealth rockers. At least Diancie, Piloswine, Registeel, Blissey.
I think Blissey.
Yeah.
Yep.
So a lot of stealth rockers. That looks like the only hazard, and then it's Zapdos for hazard removal.
Yep.
Kind of.
I guess.
There's something there with Mega Diancie.
Magic Bounce is obviously good. But hopefully, part of having like a stall or semi-stall team is winning the hazard war. And so I hope that Coach Brian is able to keep up rocks and, not be too pressured by opposing hazards.
Right.
Looks like Spikes might do very well against something like Registeel, Blissey, Vaporeon, Goodra.
Right.
Shane.
And I would say for this type of team, the defensive synergy is really there. Even just thinking of Zapdos, Registeel, and a Wish Passer. And it can be just the options that the Washington Hippopotas have to figure out exactly which ones they need to bring per week, I think is there. So it's not overly reliant on something like Cresselia to always be the Spadef wall or something along that lines. And I think that Brian has had success in the past with winning games with combinations like Vaporeon Registeel.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hopefully he's able to pull games out on defense. It looks like, in terms of offensive options, we might have Goodra, like a Bandit or Specs Goodra, maybe some kind of Machamp or some kind of setup Spiritomb. Obviously, Mega Diancie is pretty good in there.
Zapdos isn't bad as an offensive Pokemon too. I'm a little nervous because it might be forced to carry Defog. But even last season we saw the Cobalions use offensive Zapdos a few times.
Yeah, great. So I hope we see some offensive Zapdos. Some of these defensive Pokemon in more offensive roles. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
What'd you rate it?
I rated it as a B-.
I gave it a B- as well.
Okay, great. And for honorable mentions, we gave this a what did we call this? The team matches the coach. So again, like Kyle mentioned, Brian's had plenty of success using things like Registeel, things like Blissey, things like Vaporeon and Cresselia. So to us, I think this is very much of a Brian team. We also gave this an honorable mention for good use of low tiers.
Yeah.
Low tiers being
Piloswine, Registeel, Spiritomb, Machamp. Those are all good for this type of team.
Yeah, I think they carry a lot of weight. And I think this season, I think a lot of other teams have some low tiers that are don't carry as much weight as they could.
They suck. I'm kidding.
And so anyway, I think this is actually a pretty valuable kind of category that we added.
Yeah.
And what was the superlative that we gave to
I gave it defensive core, and I think it is that Zapdos, Registeel plus Wish. And there's so many different options for that.
Great. Our next coach,
number 10,
is Coach Sean of the Las Vegas Venusaurs. What's your first impression of Coach Sean?
Yes, this seems like a very bulky team. Even with, I mean, it's Celesteela, Swampert, Clefable, Gliscor. Those can come every single, and Arcanine almost can come every
Yep.
single game, and you win because you can't break Celesteela because Swampert's always a switch in, or Clefable's always a switch in. You can't get through Clefable because Celesteela's there. Gliscor's there. So I think this team will win on defense a lot of ways. So I'm going to call it a balanced team. I'll say so also just because it also has Clefable for the Wish Pass.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I also like the idea of Superior as speed control, especially on a team like this. You could run Scarf Superior if you needed to and just lock into Leaf Blade, or not Leaf Blade, Leaf Storm. Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Grass move, and then
Yep.
but you can also glare a lot of things and open up sets from Celesteela or Mega Ampharos or even like Miss Magus or I mean even set up Gliscor. All of these look better with the glare option and the speed control that Superior gives it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and we're seeing some small speed gaps, maybe between Arbok and Celesteela, which Arbok is maybe something that I don't see as very valuable on this team. So between base 95 and base 61, if you don't count Arbok, that's a little bit of a speed, in my opinion. So I don't. The speed tiers they're okay.
Right.
Not my favorite, but I think they're definitely passable. And on this kind of like really bulky team,
right.
I
less
think
necessary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean those cores are great. You have Celesteela, Clefable, and
Mega
Ampharos is a Dragon Fairy Steel. I'm not as big of a fan of Mega Ampharos. I also got blown away when you had it. So maybe I'm just salty. I think a cooler dragon I would have liked a lot more with that Dragon Fairy Steel core, but it's still there. Even Celesteela Clefable is awesome. And then for Firewater Grass, Swampert, Gliscor, Superior, Swampert, Arcanine, Superior. I really like that Firewater Grass core.
Yeah, I think he has a lot of options, a lot of mixed options too, right? Like Arcanine can run bulky or offensive, Swampert can be bulky or offensive. Superior even is surprisingly bulky at 75.5, with no quad weaknesses or anything. So,
and I like Arcanine with this team because it can either intimidate or does it get Flash Fire or one of those immunity moves? Yeah, so that with Celesteela is sweet.
Yeah, and Superior too.
Yeah,
I think this is a good team.
Yeah,
I like it.
I really like it. I almost want to defend us in saying that like this is our number 10 team, and this is a team that I would use. So I think that in general, the bulk of our teams have gotten this is a decent draft for us. So yeah, nobody take it too hard if you like get 8th or 10th or whatever, because I really like some of these teams that we've drafted this season.
Yeah, they're great. And so thinking about that, I gave this team a B-, and it's mostly for kind of these lower tiers: Tauros, Cryogonal, Arbok, and even Miss Magus a little bit, which many of those I see as not being very valuable on this team. So that's kind of what drops it to a B- for me. But overall, I think really, really great team.
Right. I think I waffled back and forth between a B and a B-. I ended up going B- for similar reasons. I think it's very top heavy. Yeah, those low tiers I think aren't as useful. Miss Magus I think is useful, but the other ones I don't think we'll see the field that much.
Yeah.
So for honorable mentions, the Dragon Fairy Steel core is present. The defensive core, I mean, that's, what would we call that? Swampert, Clefable, Celesteela, Gliscor? It's kind of like,
I think so.
That 4 is most of a team. And then also most tried and true. A lot of these Pokemon seem to be ones that the league has decided are good.
Wow. Yeah. there's a lot of them, honestly. Clefable, Swampert, Celesteela, Arcanine, Gliscor. Yeah, there's a bunch.
Yep.
And for the superlative for this team, we gave Sean the best fire water grass score. Yeah, Superior, Arcanine, and Swampert is just really incredible. Type Synergy, Flash Fire is great. And they all can be kind of defensive or offensive. It's very cool.
Yeah, this is the kind of team that I would like to help build with, because I think there's a lot of options, and I like almost to a fault. I usually get slow teams, so I relate a lot to this team.
Okay, our number 9 team is the Columbus Cobalions, headed by Coach.
Yeah, these are our defending champs.
Yeah, and I think Coach Ryan had the number 1 team 2 seasons ago. Last time we did this too. So
yeah, and arguably had it last season as well.
Yeah. So Kyle, why don't you tell us a little bit about what kind of team this is, and what makes it a number 9.
Right. So first off, I would say that since Ryan has joined the league, I've gotten a little bit more of because he's one of our newer coaches to this league. He's probably been in he has probably the most draft league experience, but he's new to our league. And this just feels like it's a very him team. He admittedly likes hyper offense, and this seems like a little bit more of a bulky version of that. Set up webs, win, or set up stealth rocks and survive a while. I think last stage, when he won it, oftentimes it was just because it was an offensive team that just had enough bulk to last longer than his opponents. And so with that obvious core of Heatran Bulu, and then the Dragon of Mega Altaria, I think that there's that right there will just be sort of quintessential to a lot of his wins. Alolan Muck is great, and I think with Bulu is awesome. Not only can it just switch in every time Bulu is threatened, but also, also in its own right has some like setup options with the curse sets. So I like this. I like this team. I think that there are some flaws, or at least some parts that I need to be proven about. Do you know what I mean?
For example, yeah, I think so. And so for example, one of the things that I see is, a little bit flawed on this team. So the speed tiers, if you look at them, there are no gaps. The top, which Coach Ryan's highest Pokemon or fastest Pokemon is Nihilego at base 1. So to me, that this might be our slowest, and especially as more of an offensive or kind of bulky offense team, to not have that speed control, I think is a little bit damaging.
Right,
so,
you almost need Araquanid those webs.
Right, yeah. Without Araquanid, so being forced to bring, Araquanid many weeks, I think could be difficult, and then it's also going to be a struggle, I think, for Ryan. He has very few defog options. So Articuno I'm seeing, and then I guess you could run defog on Mega Altaria, but you really don't want to. And that
I think you could on this team, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I think that's almost it. And so I think that's it.
Yeah.
With so something like stacking spikes could force, I don't know. There aren't very many defog options, but it could force a defog from Ryan.
Right.
So I just kind of see that as a little bit weak on this team.
Yeah. The cores are good. Dragon Fairy Steel, Firewater Grass, they're almost the same core. But
yeah, Heatran Bulu, Altaria.
Yeah.
Heatran Bulu, Araquanid.
Yep. Or Lantern.
Or Lantern. Mm-hmm.
I like it too because there aren't many ground weak Pokemon. I guess kind of, but also like a lot of resistances with Bulu and the terrain, and Araquanid. Mudsdale can switch in on that kind of stuff. So I had Heatran last stage, and I really had to focus on unless I just wanted to run Shuckaberry every week. then I don't think he'll have to worry as much as I did about that ground weakness.
Yeah. I'd also be interested to see some calcs on Nihilego with earthquakes. I wonder if terrain is even turning Okos into 2-hit KOs on Nihilego.
I think so.
Maybe it is.
Yeah,
but
I mean, with that high of an HP stat, and like with a coach like Ryan who will calc as he preps, I think he'll be able to like figure out what he can live and EV accordingly.
Yeah, so I mean, I think this is a fun team. I think it'll be good. I think Ryan will use it well. So I'm very curious to see how the speed and how the hazards work out.
Cool.
That's kind of what I'm curious about.
Cool.
So overall, I give this team a B. Yeah, I think it's good. I think it has some weaknesses, but all teams have weaknesses. So
right,
we'll see how it goes.
Right, and I gave this team a B as well. The honorable mentions that it clocked for us are most tried and true. A lot of these Pokemon, including like the low tiers, Mudsdale and Articuno, are
Alolan Mach.
Right. These are all Pokemon that our league loves for whatever reason. Our league loves Articuno. So yeah, I think that there's something to be said there. There's also the Firewater Grass Core and hazards. May not have good hazard removal, but it can hazard stack very, very easily, I think.
Yeah. And for the superlative, we gave Ryan the this team matches coach. That's what we're calling it.
Right.
Yeah. So even though he's a self-professed hyper offense lover, I think the kind of bulkiness of Pokemon like Bulu and Heatran and Mega Altaria and Nihilego, surprisingly bulky on the special side, is going to serve Ryan very well. I think he's going to pilot this team well.
Cool. All right. Let's do one more before I save our work. Okay.
We go to intermission.
Right. There'll be no break for you all, but I'm going to pause it just so I can avoid any of those weird crashes that my computer sometimes gets.
But remember a couple times ago when we recorded everything and it was erased?
Yes, I do remember.
That was great. Yeah. Yes. Porch League, you should love us because we re-recorded that episode.
Yeah. So.
Yep. Cool. Tell us about Coach Chris and the Sootopolis Salamances.
All right. This is a bulky offense team with really good, I guess, top half. Tapu Koko, Zygarde, Skarmory is like, I mean, that is the best Dragon Fairy Steel Core. They'll work very well together. You'll have hazards. You have hazard removal. You can set up with Zygarde very easily with either getting rid of hazards or hazard stacking or like running dual screens Coco to get in Zygarde. So that's really cool. And then just the offense in the mid range with Kyurem and Volcarona, I think will really help kind of break. If he uses those as the breakers to set up, or even like Specs Coco, there's just like a lot with those top 5. He can run those every week.
I think this team actually has a lot of opportunities to run like a bulkier Volcarona, like where you don't have to, Volcarona is great at coming and clicking Quiver Dance and winning, but there's a lot of you could even run like a Scarf, with Z you can run anyway.
Right.
You can run lots of I'd be excited to see Chris kind of come up with some fun tech for Volcarona.
The speed, there's a little bit, it might need to run 252 speed sometimes because you don't want Zygarde to be your second fastest thing each week. If you can avoid it. So, because there might be just some things that are set up, like they might have some Scarfers set up for Zygarde. So if you're running that much speed, it might not be able to get as bulky as you want it, but I agree that there's room for that. And then with the low tiers, there's some options with the electric terrain, and then that seed with Sceptile and Driftblim. So there's some weird tech there. There's also some weird tech with Mega Bayonet. I hope he honestly just got Mega Bayonet as just because he wanted to get 3 tier 1s, because I don't think he should bring it most weeks given what the rest of his team looks like.
Yeah, and then this is kind of some of my gripes about this team are basically that it's very very top, which is great because those top 5 or 6 are incredible. But Pokemon like Claydol, I just think is not a good Pokemon. And yeah, you mentioned there's some cool tech with like the Unbird on some of the lower tiers, but
And
I don't
nobody
know if
knows what Swoobat does, so I'm sure Chris will win a
right.
game off of that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. I gave this team a B. Or no, I gave it a B plus. I think it's good. I think the top half is incredible. I think it might be easy to prep for because you're going to have to bring the top half most weeks.
Yeah, I mean, but even then, it's hard to prep for Volcarona and Zygarde. Um, so yeah, I gave it
Yeah.
a B. I think it's okay. Going into honorable mentions, its speed tiers are good. It has an offensive core that I enjoy. Even if it's like Kyurem, Zygarde, Volcarona, Coco, and also honorable mention in most improved. Let me real quick. I think I can pull up. Yeah, this is stage 2. Um, Chris went with a creative stall team that didn't end up um receiving many wins. And so I think that stage 3, this team does what Chris likes to do better than the last one. So it got honorable mention most improved and also weird tech, given all those what that low stuff can do, and also what Coco can bring.
Right. And as the superlative, we gave this best Dragon Fairy Steel Core. I mean, how could we not?
Right.
With 3 tier 1s, Coco, Zygarde, and yeah, I think that's going to be great for Chris.
Awesome. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everyone. Let's talk about our 7th ranked coach, and that would be Coach Connor, the Seer, as I like to call it. So, Kyle, why don't you introduce us to this team, this rain team?
Yeah, I think we finally got a rain team that is actually like a full rain team most of the time when our league goes for weather. Except maybe with, I think there's one time, I'm gonna like eat my words if I say anything too definitive, but the other kind of weather team that stood out, that felt full weather was the Braviaries team with Mega Titar. But this like feels like the first functional, like almost OU style rain team. And that is obviously with Pelipper, Mega Swampert, Manaphy, Ludicolo, and Kingdra. And then also things like Azelf and Thundurus. I think Thundurus in the rain could be really cool.
Yeah, and you know, Connor too, which is pretty standard on OU. Now, I just had a thought, which is that does Thundurus get Hurricane?
I don't think so. I'm going to check. I'm going to check while you talk about other things.
Okay. If so, that's awesome. If not, well, anyway.
Nope.
So I think the speed tiers. Oh, it doesn't. Okay.
No, on the special side, it gets HP flying.
Damn. I think the speed tiers for this team are awesome. Especially, so you might think just looking at him, Azelf base 115 looks like the fastest thing. But with Swift Swim for Kingdra, Mega Swampert, it's looking a whole lot faster. Right. And there aren't really any gaps either between 115 and 45 all the way down there. So right. Yeah, I think speed tiers are awesome, and hazards. I mean, it has Ferrothorn, which is, great for rocks and spikes, and it's going to be an easy bring for Connor every week. He also has a T-Spike option with Garbodor, which is very cool. Mega Swampert can obviously run spikes, or sorry, can obviously run stealth rocks, even though on this team I don't think it has to. And a Zelf is a great suicide lead. And I think it's a cool option as a lead besides Pelipper, where on a rain team, a different rain team, it might be obvious that Pelipper's the lead every time, so a Zelf can mix it up, which I think is very cool.
Right. I think the removals. Did we talk about the removal?
No.
Yeah. So Thundi gets Prankster Defog, and Pelipper can usually run Defog pretty easily. So the hazard removal is pretty okay for this type of team, especially because I think the goal is to set up hazards and win fast. There might be, can I say, one too many special rain abusers. Like I could totally see Connor finding reason not to bring Manaphy, and that's tier ones cost a lot. So, but I mean, also being that you can have a wall breaker with Manaphy and then sweep later with Ludicolo. So, I don't know. I'm just trying to think about what could have helped patch up this team so that it doesn't have to bring rain every week, because to be honest, I'm not a fan of Granbull or Furret, and so I like
Right.
Garbodor on the team though.
Yeah, I think Garbodor is very cool. But yeah, I guess when we were discussing beforehand, we're a little bit unsure of how, basically, we do think it's like a little bit of a weakness that this team seems like it has to run rain, but we're not really sure how much.
Yeah.
I guess, maybe try and prove us wrong, Connor.
I mean, yeah, if you win every game, if you can, it really can be hard to prep for Swampert plus Manaphy, with Thunderous and his elf as well. So there's like, I think if Connor plays this team well, then I could eat my words. Yeah, I just don't have much experience with like a strictly rain draft league team.
Yeah. Cool. So I think it's great. And for that reason, I gave this team a B plus.
And I think I was a little more hesitant, just seeing all the things that weren't the rain part of the party. So I gave it a B.
Yeah. For our honorable mentions, kind of like we discussed before, I think this team has great speed tiers, especially when you get the rain boosted speeds. So it was an honorable mention for speed tiers, and then we also talked about the hazards as well. So it's honorable mention for hazards.
Yep, and then it won offensive core. Yeah, I'm excited to see how rain works.
Yeah, great. Our next coach is coach for number 6.
Number 6. So this is kind of like our Sun Conference cutoff, or our playoff cutoff version of. This is the top cut in our draft analysis.
Yeah. So this is Coach Matt of the Driftville Drapions. Matt has a cool team. It's great. Tops off with Megalodios. So very bulky. And again, a rather slow team with kind of base 110 being the fastest. Webs in Galvantula. So kind of reminding me a little bit of the Cobalions team from before.
Right.
But I don't think it's held back as much as the Cobalions team, because you're getting things that are great scarfers like without webs. Exactly.
Yeah.
It can still succeed without webs. Yeah. So Keldeo is a great scarfer. Landorus T has great setup options with rock polish. I don't know if Matt has declared his Z users yet. I don't see them.
It might have been earlier today.
Okay. Well, let's see.
Landorus, Venomoth. Yeah, those are great.
Oh yeah.
Basically just like the setup nukes. And Venomoth I'm really excited about. I think that at first his team just looks like a lot of things that hit hard. It looks kind of like just a standard bulky offense team, but he also has ways to set up that you might not set up for. If you're worried about, I don't know, if you're too focused on Keldeo, then Rock Polish, Z-Fly, Lando is going to take you out. Or Calm Mind, Megalodios, or so there's, and Venomoth too. I think Venomoth is a good low tier pick for the Drapion.
Yeah, and I think the Drapions have actually quite a few cool low tier picks, like Fortress and Regirock,
Mm-hmm.
along with Venomoth, and I believe Metacham is dropped to tier 4.
Yeah.
Turtonator, I'm not a fan of. I don't think I've ever seen it succeed in our draft league. So yeah, prove us.
Right. Prove us wrong. I think I think it's good, like pretty great hazards.
Yeah,
Galvantula, Landorus, Venomoth, Regirock,
and
Fortress.
Fortress.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
Fortress gets. Yeah, so that's all the hazards.
That's all the different types of hazards and from good users of each of them. And then on top of that, the removal options are there. Granted, it's like Lando and Latias
And
primarily.
Fortress.
Right. Yeah. So they're there. I think ends up getting an honorable mention for them. Um, I would like it if it wasn't his potential like Lando, Venomoth, Latias, if those weren't, because it feels like you either have to hold one of those Pokemon back or bring Fortress.
Mm-hmm.
But
Kind of makes sense.
Dragon Fairy Steel Core is okay.
I think it's good. Yeah, Latias, and Primarina.
Yeah.
And Magnezone. Yeah.
Very defensive. And Fortress.
Yeah.
Like bulky offense or defensive, depending on which ones he brings.
It's gonna be Mega Latias is gonna be really nasty with Magnezone, actually. That's I like those together.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, overall, I gave this team a B plus. The more I looked at this team, the more I was like, oh, I want to draft a team like this in the future. I love Primarina and Keldeo together because I don't actually think they're that overlapping, even though they're both water types. They're both offensive water types, decently offensive water types. Yeah, I think it does a good job. I gave it a B plus.
Yeah, I gave this team a B. I think it's great. I think something I'm nervous about is that it might, a lot of these Pokemon either require setup or want kind of a choice locked item. So Keldeo is great, but a little bit better with Specs or a Calm Mind. Mega Latias a little bit better with a Calm Mind. Landorus, so Venomoth.
Right.
Metacham likes a choice band. Magnezone likes a scarf or Specs.
Primarina, Specs.
Yeah, Primarina, yeah. So for me, those things kind of make this team. I can imagine it being difficult to build with this kind of team. So anyway, so I gave it a B, but I'm excited to see what kind of comes out of this team.
Great. For honorable mentions, it got hazard removal, checks all the boxes, and then it got the best in the category of best hazards.
Yeah. Great. Our next team, so we're in the top 5 now, right?
Yep.
All right, number 5. This is Coach Colin of the Baltimore Bravier.
Hey. Dun, dun, dun,
dun. And this team, this is funny. We have this category that's most what is it?
Coach,
team matches.
Yeah, team matches coach.
Team matches coach. This team matches a different coach, which is Andy, I think. So I think separately, they're two kind of weird cores on this team of Dugtrio, Linoon. So Dugtrio kind of traps the things Linoon, which Andy drafted before. And then Zardex, Rotomo, Suicune. I believe Andy actually had Zardex, Rotomo, Suicune together.
Yeah.
And then Buzzwole, maybe was Buzzwole also on that team? I don't know. And he's had Murkrow recently. Anyway, it's just very kind of funny.
Right.
But I think it's a great team. It has all of these weird synergies. And the speed tiers, especially considering that, this season we have a lot of coaches with lower speeds, so having something like Dugtrio at base 120 actually is very key. And then no real speed gaps below base 100. So I think the speed tiers are actually, not bad.
Right. I like what he did with his low tiers. I think picking up Linoon is a good tier 4 for him. I think Murkrow works well. I think it'll add some useful tech, whether it's does it get some weird things like Thunderwave or Will-O-Wisp, or
It has Prankster.
pranks. Yeah, it gets
Yeah.
prankster moves, and then
Yeah.
like with Klefki and Kofagrigus, Licky Licky. I just think that there's like the low tiers are good, and they can help bring just the right thing. Whether it's Will-O-Wisp on Rotom-Mow or something, just like they each kind of have like those weird fourth move options that I think could work really well.
Yeah. And the hazards, I think, are definitely there. Kofagrigus gets spikes and T-spikes. Klefki, Prankster, spike. And Mew is a great rocker. Dugtrio can run rocks pretty easily.
Right.
That's cool. And in terms of removal, we get Klefki with Prankster Defog. Murkrow has Prankster Defog. Rotom-Mow is obviously a great defogger, and Mew,
Right.
again, a really excellent defogger. So I think the hazards and the removal options are both there for me.
Right. I like it. And I think also Kofagrigus as a spin blocker is good too. So in general, I think that Braviaries are set up to win the hazard war. So you'll see inside our honorable mentions and superlatives that'll be reflected.
Yeah.
I like this team. I think he can do well with it. There's a lot of different setup options, and I love that with Dugtrio. So I gave it an A-.
Yeah. I gave this team a B. And to be honest, I think this was the first team that I think my mind is being changed a little bit. I think I was off put by something, but I'm kind of having a tough time placing it right now.
I remember you talking about their speed tiers. With Dugtrio being the only thing faster than base 100. I remember you making a deal out of that.
Yeah, I think I did think that was a deal, but we went through this in alphabetical order first, and Balt is the second one. But after looking at the rest of the teams, most teams don't have anything faster than base 120. A lot of teams only have their fastest thing as base 103, base 105, base. So I think, after looking at the other teams, I don't see the speed tiers as much of a problem as I did before. So I gave this a B, but I might upgrade that if I got a redo.
Strong B. B+.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. Number 4.
Hey, what about the oh, did we already do the honorable?
Oh no! Sorry. We're back.
Cool. Honorable mentions.
Firewater Grass, great. Weird. with Rotom-Mow, Charizard, and what's the other one? Suicune.
Yep.
Yeah, those are 3 great ones. You have a Mega 1, a good tier 2, and a good tier 3.
Yep. And we have Weird Tech with Kofagrigus and Klefki, and some Murkrow things that we kind of discussed. Linoon, obviously, and Dugtrio, there's like some synergy there. You can run Memento or something. Mm-hmm. So that's cool. And you had mentioned the low tiers before as well.
Yeah. And it won the category best removal.
Yep. Great. Okay. Team number 4. This is Coach Kyle of the Columbus Merc Crew. We were kind of discussing before, it seems like we rate our teams well. And you know what? We're the ones doing this analysis video, so we draft what we think are good. And
make your own damn draft analysis video if you don't think I should be 4th.
Yeah. So I like this team a lot. I think, and I think you like this team. This really, even though it has kind of a pretty different makeup, it reminds me of Colin's team when he won the league a few seasons ago, because it has a Regenerator core with Alola and Torrentee, and then also has an Intimidate core with Crooked Eye. So that's cool. We haven't seen those combined in a long time, and so I'm excited to see where that leads us. You also have a very fast team when most people in this league have a slow teams. So you were even excited. The reason you drafted these speed tiers the way you did: Mega Alakazam at base 150, Zeraora base 143, Torrentee 121, Cobalion 108. Typhlosion 100. Part of the reason you drafted, some of those upper tiers together is so that you could run, you didn't have to run speed on everything each week.
Or at least not like timid and jolly each time.
Exactly. So I think I'm excited to see I think you have a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, this team was a little bit of a I was looking back at my stage 1 and stage 2 teams, and I had a lot of bulk and not a lot of upfront offense and not a lot of speed. So for those of you that are watching that aren't in the league, we're taking these 3 stages in season 9, and for playoffs we have to make a team of 11 out of what we drafted for the past 3 stages. So I was trying to patch some holes. But in the meantime, I think I made a team that I can play well with. I really like balance. But the seasons that I've run more offensive, like Coco Metacham in this league, or my Megaladios team the last time I played in the SSBL, are the teams that I've actually been more successful with. So I think this will challenge my play style. But I mean, I like a lot of these Pokemon too. They're just some of my favorites.
Yeah. And we have kind of our tier 3 fan favorites in this league of Crocodile and Cobalion. Those get picked up every season. So it's pretty exciting. Looking at your hazards, I think you have great hazards. Do you have every hazard? Do you have webs?
Yeah. No, I don't have webs. Who needs
Druddigon,
webs?
Yeah, but kind of especially with this like really offensive team of Mega Alakazam, Zeraora, Torrentee, having spike stacking in Quilladin and Quillfish. Quillfish can obviously run T-spikes as well. Crocodile's a rocker. Druddigon's a rocker with Mold Breaker against someone with Magic Bounce. You're a lot of Magic teams that draft Magic Bounce users sort of slack off on the hazard removal, and so you're kind of doing well in that regard. Cobalion's a good rocker. So I think for hazards, you're doing great. For removal, this is one of the places I think your team's a little weaker. I guess you do have Torrentee and Florges, but for me, Florges always has. I don't like Florges very much. It runs into 4-move slot syndrome for me, where I really want Heal Bell and Wish and Protect and Moonblast and Calm Mind and Defog and Toxic, and so it's kind of those 7, and I can never quite. I have a feeling that you're going to have trouble running Defog on Florges, just based on my own use of it, and Torrentee. So anyway, I think you might be kind of forced into some team building options because of your limited.
That's fair.
Removal.
I think having a Rapid Spinner would have been great for this team.
I agree. Yeah, if Quilladin had Rapid Spin, great.
Oh, nice.
But
Quilla Spin.
But that doesn't mean go pick up someone like Claydol. IMO, not a good Pokemon. Anyway, so you have Dragon Fairy Steel Core that's kind of nice in Florges, Druddigon, and Cobalion.
Yeah, it's defense. Yeah, it's defensive. Fun. They both have, I have 2 sets of rockers and a defogger in it. So I like it quite a bit actually. Especially because I'm spending a lot of my high value on things that don't really fit in standard cores. Like they don't have there's not a Fire Water Grass, Dragon Fairy Steel in my top 3 picks.
Right. So I gave this team a B+. I think it's very good. I think again the speed tiers are great. I think it's pretty offensive, which is cool, and I hope open up your play style a little bit. I know that's something you always kind of are trying to do. Well, that's cool. I also think it's a lot better than your last draft, which let me just pull up.
I got it
for a second.
I can pull it up.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
This was the one. It was kind of weird. You made a couple trades. You had me and Chow.
I had a dumb theme.
Didn't work out well.
I had a dumb theme going into it, and it just left me with like a lot of middling Pokemon. Like round 1 and round 2 picks of Azu and Heatran, I don't think were worth it, especially where I was in the draft. And then I just had like a lot of water types and a lot of fire types. So I felt like the reason I won 5 and lost 3 was more my playing and my team building than it was the team that I had.
Yeah. So anyway, because of that, you got an honorable mention for most improved draft.
Woo!
And like we talked about, I think you have a very offensive, this kind of offensive pivoty core of Zero or a Torn-T or Mega Zam. Those kind of 3 I think are really good, very offensive. You also had a nice physical special split. Things like Zero Aura are great, can run physical or special. Cobalion actually can surprisingly run a good special set. And yeah,
especially as a user.
Exactly. So I think you got physical special split as an honorable mention, and then hazards as we talked about before. You have great hazard options, and you won the superlative for best speed tiers.
Awesome. What grade did you give me?
I gave you a B+.
Nice. And I gave me an X.
Yes, we did not grade ourselves.
I gave myself a big old X. Top 3. Adam, you made it number 3.
Hey,
congratulations.
Hey, nice. Thanks. I'm excited.
I think you also
for rating my team so highly.
Yeah, I think you also got a most improved. Let me look at your team.
My last team, I was so excited about it, and I was just very disappointed in how I performed with it. I had Mega Beedrill, Coco, and so I was
had like a hyper offensive team without the pressure, and you didn't have
pressure,
and you didn't have defense. I mean, you did. It was just like
right.
Bronzong, AV Conk, Golbat, and Gliscor.
Yeah, I mean, I had to bring Bronzong to every single match,
right?
And yeah, I was also excited because I had Webs plus Trick Room, and so I thought it would be fun to try and mess with people. Like, are they going to outspeed or outslow? But I only brought Trick Room once, and I know. So anyway, felt like I flopped last season a little bit.
Right. So you're up there. I think honestly, this team's really good. I think it is third best in our league, and so in that way, I think it's very improved. Let me talk about it though, so you don't have to talk about your own team.
Yeah, tell me about it.
All right. Yeah. Basically, since we got, a lot of teams in Draft League are bulky offense. My team was bulky offense. The 2 before me were bulky offense. I think yours also fits the bill for bulky offense. You have a lot of pretty cool staples. Honestly, it reminds me of a good UU bulky offense team. And I don't use UU pejoratively. I just mean how you play UU teams, is I think how you'll be successful just with like staples like Gligar, Como-O, Comfey, Celebi, Raikou. All these things fit very well and do have really cool rolls. I think Tentacruel as a good rapid spinner will be good for the amount of hazards that you have. What are your hazards? It's Selgor, Celebi, Tentacruel, Como-O, Gligar, Aurorus.
Yep.
And yeah, with Tentacruel as a fast spinner is going to be good for that. Yeah, I mean, Mega Scizor, Blacephalon, I think will be a very potent offense, and I think it's going to be hard for some teams to just deal with that. You also have like an odd amount of priority moves. So not only are your speed tiers good, but you also have priority and, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like Honchkrow, Scizor, Celebi get like quick attack or something.
Comfey gets
Comfey gets its ability triage gives it those healing moves, straight like its offensive moves will have priority, and then Raikou gets like E-speed.
And actually Selgor gets Water Shuriken too. I forgot about that.
So yeah, so you have good speed tiers, and on top of that, good priority. You have good ways to pivot into your different Pokemon with either pivot moves like Volt Switch or U-turn, but also good Pokemon that deny other Pokemon and then can help you switch to something else.
Mm.
So yes, great. What's your Dragon Fairy Steel Core?
It is Mega Scizor Komao Comfy.
Yeah, that's great.
So I think Comfy is surprisingly good in Draft League. I had it before and I really like it. So I'm excited to use it again.
I would have
Alongside some newcomers like Honchkrow has never been drafted in our league.
Auroras.
I think Mega Scizor has been used before
last season. Won the stage.
Oh yeah, not by me though. I haven't used it. I think Celebi's only been used a handful of times. Tentacruel has never been drafted. That's something I've done. So I'm excited to work around with this team.
I would have liked a better dragon. I think Haxorus would have been really cool, but Como makes sense because it adds a rocker for you and gives you a potential breaker in a fighting type.
Yeah, and I think I needed a kind of defensive Pokemon. I have a lot of.
That's true.
Anyway, yeah, that's one of the reasons I went with Como. It's more of a defensive.
Cool. And then what's your Dragon Fairy or your Firewater Grass?
Sorry, what was that?
Firewater Grass. Celebi, Blacephalon, Tentacruel.
And yep.
Yeah, that's great.
Tentacruel.
That'll be good.
Yeah.
I think even just Celebi and Blacephalon is really cool. And I think Tentacruel will do well on this kind of team. You don't really have... What's your ground weaknesses? Raikou, Tentacruel? Blacephalon?
Yeah, not a ton. Yeah, Blacephalon, Raikou, Tentacruel. But I feel like I have great switch-ins in Celebi. Mega Scizor is such a good switch-in. Obviously, Gligar is super easy there. I was a little bit worried about a psychic weakness as I was, Blacephalon resists psychic, but is not very defensively strong. So
yeah, but you have such a fast bug type that.
Yeah, that's true. Excel was sort of a late round addition for me.
Honchkrow too kind of checks the psychics.
Yep. So yeah, I think Celebi, a lot of people have shied away from it in the past because of its typing, specifically because it's quad weak to U-turn. But I think it actually has nice defensive typing for resisting things like electric and fighting and psychic and grass and ground.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be a good utility Pokemon for you.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. We talked too much about you. I gave it an A overall, and you gave it a big old X. Honorable mentions in hazards, hazard removal, physical special split, checks all the boxes, and the use of the low tiers. We gave you that one. I'm not convinced about Aurorus, but because we have weather teams, I think that it could potentially have a good role. So those are all the honorable mentions, and you won the most improved.
Thanks. Nice. All right, let's move on. And let's try and wrap up quick, even though these last two coaches deserve a ton of time to be spent on their teams. Next, number 2, we have Coach Andy of the Hoos, as they call it.
There it is.
With this cool ass bulky offense and or hyper offense Mega Pinsir team.
Right.
It's awesome.
I think it's almost like a bulky hyper offense team. There's I love Seismitoad and Roserade together. That's kind of been proven in our other league, SSBL. Coach George, shout out Austrian George if you're watching this. Shout out SSBL. Thank God you've got into this far into the video. but I mean, yeah, that is really good at like mitigating any sort of electric weakness. I mean, yeah, so you have Rotom Wash, Roserade, Seismitoad to just set up hazards and take away hazards pretty much in all scenarios. And then on the offensive side, you have Garchomp and Mega Pinsir, which can break for each other. You have Diggersby, which can just like hit very, very, very hard. Could run Choice Band, is a really good Scarfer as well. I think Roserade's a good Scarfer. Rotom Wash can run Scarf if you need it to. So the speed tiers, for being as slow as the team is, I actually think that the speed tiers are fine. Especially with like if Andy wants to run the sort of Shuckle lead hyper offense, then you can totally do that. Set up webs and just kind of run through everything. I don't think the team is that weak to rocks, given that it's built around Mega Pinsir. Especially if he brings in Mega Pinsir late game, when it's still just regular Pinsir, then it's only taking 25% from rocks and is bulky enough that Andy can EV it to live when it needs to live to set up the Swords Dance to sweep late game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, like we talked about Coach Ryan's team, this is, a very similar where you kind of tops out at base one, and but with really good speed tiers below that, and also kind of having webs, but a little bit different. I think this team doesn't really rely on the webs. It has, like you mentioned, Kyle, great defensive synergy with Seismitoad and Roserade, but also adding Incineroar in there, and it looks like a great Firewater Grass core to me. Incineroar with like the pivot and the Intimidate. Yeah, it's looking really good. And it can a dark type to kind of soak up the psychic moves for Roserade, soaking up, grass moves for Seismitoad. So I think that looks really great. I think
I like Magneton. I like it.
It's such a good tier 4.
Right.
You don't have to run Eviolite on it either. You can still run Specs or Scarf.
Right. It might not be the best steel type, but I don't think he's like profoundly weak to steel. Especially with Rotom Wash and Seismitoad. But yeah, I mean, it's a really good like second electric type with Rotom Wash and can trap some of those steel types that Pinsir might have trouble with.
Yeah, I also think it's really fun. One way to wear things down for Pinsir is Diggersby gets spikes. And so I think I know spikes come in other places like Roserade, and I can't remember if Shuckle gets spikes, but I think that could be some interesting tech to run something different than a Scarf or Banded. Diggersby can run like kind of defensive with U-turn and spikes.
Right. I mean, you could run Banded with
something.
spikes because you're going to scare something out, get up a spike and run away.
It's absolutely true. Yeah, you can play it a little bit like Greninja in OU. So
right.
So that'd be cool. I mean, I think this team is great. With removal options, we see, especially removal is important with such hazards on this side. So we see Hitmontop.
Rotom Wash.
There's not, which is not a ton, but I think those are certainly good.
Good enough, yeah.
Right. It's absolutely going to get the job done. So, yeah. So I think great hazards. The removal is definitely fine. Oh, and Hitmontop gets Intimidate as well. So you have a little Intimidate.
What would you say if Andy could have done something better? This is a team that you love. If he could have done something better, would you say it's a lot in the speed tiers?
I think it's a little bit in the speed. Like, yeah, this is an incredible team. But for me, yeah, having base 105 be your top speed, even in a season as slow as this one, I think
right.
For me, that's just a little bit difficult. And I think what's going to happen is that Andy's going to be running Z Sandstorm on Garchomp, Scarf on Roserade, Scarf on Rotom Wash, Scarf on Diggersby often. And luckily, part of why the team is rated so high is because all of those are great options, right?
Right.
And the team doesn't necessarily rely. You can run slow,
right?
And Mega Pinsir has priority, right? And Diggersby has priority.
I think there's something too about potentially like his fast Pokemon being weak to ice. I mean, if Mega Pinsir becomes Mega early on, then I mean you could potentially just see someone run a Scarf Ice Beam Pokemon. And that'll threaten a lot of his fast Pokemon from Diggersby up. Rotom Wash can take those ice hits fine, but if the opponent is running Stealth Rocks, then you don't want to keep taking that passive chip.
Yeah, absolutely. So I gave this team an A-. Again, yeah, for all the reasons we discussed, and I think you're right to point out the ice weakness there.
But I gave it
Um,
I gave it an A overall. I think this is a type of team that Andy can use really, really well. I think he's like seen success both on the ladder and in our league with these types of teams. So I gave it an A. Um, honorable
yeah,
mentions: Hazards, Firewater Grass with Roserade, Rotom Wash, Seismitoad, and Incineroar. Offensive core, even just with Garchomp Mega Pinsir where they can break for each other. Defensive cores with kind of the Firewater Grass core plus Sylveon. We did all that mentioning and not even one of the cleric on the team. and and then I think it also checks a lot of all the boxes. Honorable mention is that. And then team matches coach, honorable mention.
hmm great. And I think the best in class, the superlative for this team is best use. Yes, I think
Use of low tiers.
Shuckle.
Sorry, you cut
Yeah,
out.
best use of low. Okay, yeah, best use of low tiers. So Shuckle, Magneton, Hitmontop, Seismitoad. These Pokemon are all adding a lot of value to this team, which is something
On the
that
yeah, on this type of team, they don't even look like low tiers. Like Shuckle and Magneton kind of do, but I mean, I think all of like Hitmontop and Seismitoad just make so much sense on the team. They barely look like low tiers.
yeah, I agree. Cool. Why don't you introduce us to our number one overall team?
Well, if you are good at deduction, it's the Houston Haxorus.
Hey,
Coach
Houston
Ian.
Haxorus,
Ian
nice.
recently has been listening to Pokemon podcasts and getting involved and watching the YouTube series, and I think it showed off in this very successful team. I mean, you can just see it. It looks like a draft league team. It's like, um, I mean, even yeah. Oh my gosh, just the top Dragon Fairy Steel with Steelix, Fini, Kyurem. Kyurem being a really good dragon type to go along with Tapu Fini, because you don't really have to run a dragon move on Kyurem Black. Um, and the other top tier dragons are floating. The Lotties, I'm thinking of specifically. Um, so where under Misty Terrain, um, your dragon moves are still doing full damage because you are grounded. Their dragon moves are only doing half damage. So that's a cool little synergy there. You have extremely high defense and SPDEF when you look at Steelix and Tapu Fini. Um, and then you just have like a lot of really cool support for that, whether it's Thunderous Therian, which is a good sort of um, option to go
I mean,
to with Tapu Fini. The synergy
yeah,
there is really good.
it's a nice pivot in with Volt Absorb, and then obviously the ever reliable Lucha and plus terrain. So Fini in this case,
Hmm.
I think is great. But this team doesn't even rely on taking away Halucha. This is still a great team. You have great setup options in Rabombi, which Ian's seen. Again, Halucha, Thunderous T, Nasty Plotting up, Fini, Calm Minding up. And we see Decidueye, I believe, gets Swords Dance.
Yep.
Yeah, so a lot of setup options here. I'm a big fan of Nidoqueen as a Pokemon, just in general, and especially in Draft League. I think the stat extremely useful.
Right, and
So
his team is very not weak to ground, especially when you look at the ones he'll be bringing regularly. So even like a Nidoqueen plus Decidueye is cool. You have like a hazard setter and then a rapid or like a spin blocker. Um, Nidoqueen's just going to be really cool. Looking at his top threats, potentially fairies could get in the way depending on what kind of Steelix he brings. So, um, Nidoqueen seems very fit for this type of team.
yeah, one thing just that I'm noticing right now is that I wonder, um, you might not have a lot of T Spike success. Oh, Nidoqueen doesn't get T Spikes, does it?
I don't know. I
Um,
don't think it does. Does it?
oh, I don't know.
Haha.
If it did, if it did, Misty Terrain plus T-Spikes might be
Yeah, it
a
gets
little
Toxic Spikes.
strange.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, great. Yeah. So anyway, that's just something to kind of watch out for.
Yeah.
You might kind of frustrate yourself there by bringing. I would say looking at the lower tiers, Throw. I'm not a big fan of. I think Hitmonchan is definitely the best tier 5 fighting type, and Girder. And I don't think either of those were drafted this season.
Yeah.
And there were tier 5 fighting types that were drafted, like Throw and Primeape. I'm not the biggest fan of Throw. I think Cradily is cool,
especially when you have Hawlucha.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how I feel about it. I don't see it adding too much value to this team necessarily. Cradily is cool as a water absorb. So a nice Nidoqueen switch in. Decidueye doesn't like to get Kyurem, doesn't like to get burned. So Cradely's in there.
I almost feel like Ian drafted a team that was good, and then with the last handful of picks, just went, okay, what Pokemon do I like? And that's and that can work here, especially when you have such a solid front half. I know Cradily was a Pokemon that Ian's been a fan of, and yeah, I think, and almost in my head when I rank this team number 1, I'm putting my thumb over the last 3 Pokemon. That's how strong I think the top part of it is. But I think those low tiers are things that are gonna make sure Ian is just having a good time rather than playing to win.
Yeah. So I gave this team an A overall. I think this is the best team in the draft. Kyle and I did this separately, and so that's kind of just my first look at all the teams. This is the best team.
Yeah, and I honestly don't know between our top 3 teams, Adam's team, and then namely Andy's and this team. I don't know which one I would give the top 2. Maybe this one, maybe Andy's, depending on the day. And for that reason, I gave all 3 an A. They're all awesome. So that is that. Honorable mentions. It got speed tiers, which are solid. There aren't many holes. Hazards, great. Dragon Fairy Steel with the Kyurem, Tapu Fini, Mega Steelix. Best offensive core. Even with the Lucha, Thundy, Kyurem Black. Very fine. Very great. And then this is kind of a list of tried and true Pokemon in our league. And for Ian especially, thinking about Decidueye. I think some of these picks are almost like redemption picks where Ian might regret how he used these Pokemon in previous seasons. He's like almost picked them back up to say, all right, now what can I do with them?
Yep. And so for that reason, we gave this the superlative of checks all the boxes. This is the best team in the league this season, and it does everything you do. So great job, Coach Ian.
Awesome. So that wraps up our draft analysis for stage 3. I hope you liked it. I hope it didn't feel too rushed. And I hope there were things that we didn't say, because I want other people to get together and make their own videos. Do it however you want. Make it, you can either grade the teams, you can not grade the teams, you can use a checklist of ways to talk about the teams. You could go in alphabetical order, you can go in rank order. Just have fun with it because it's really fun to do these kinds of videos.
Yeah, it's really helpful. And yeah, it is actually helpful for us when we do the videos. I think it helps me prep for the teams in the future.
Cool.
So that's good. Yeah, let us know. Let us know what you think. If you disagree, and what you think about other people's teams too.
All right, this will double as the front page coming up for this week. You can see right here. Here are the matchups for week 1, which starts on Monday, and let's just go ahead and name the 2 primetime matchups. Both of those being, so one from the Sun Conference, one from the Moon Conference. Adam, when you look at the Sun Conference, which matchup are you most excited about?
Well, let's see. So that would be, I think Haxorus Cobalions
Cool.
could be really good for me. Our top rated team this season versus the kind of the leader.
Yeah. Oh, so if you're not in the
So
league, this was the rank coming into the season. So, all right. And then for the Moon Conference,
oh, it's got to be Chris and Brian.
Right, yeah. I was just trying to read them all. I was like, I got to that one. Chris and Brian for sure. I think that they both have things to prove with each other, and both of them want to do well. Did they both get knocked out of the Sun Conference?
I believe they did.
So
There were a lot of teams.
yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
that got knocked out last season.
So I think they both want to make their way up into the top cut so that they get a good set of points going into the playoffs.
Cool.
Cool. Have fun.
Okay, with bird out, as they say.
Bird out.